Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy. Joined again this week by Ruairi Walsh, and we're delighted to have Liam Walsh on with us this week. Liam, how are things?
Good, thanks very much, Mark. Nice to be here with the two of you.
Very good. Rory, how are you feeling anyway, leading into this Clare contest with Dublin?
Yeah, nervy actually, to be honest. You wouldn't know what you're going to see with Clare the way they've been going so far, and Dublin are probably a bit. They're the Leinster version of Clare this championship so far, been up and down as well. So it's going to be it's a hard one to put a prediction on, but at the same time, you'd be hopeful, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose we'll run the rule over these two All Ireland senior quarterfinals set for Thurles this weekend. We'll also look at some intercounty senior hurling manager news that we didn't actually cover last week in the provincial finals. Keith Rossiter, good friend of the show, has left Wexford after 3 years in Helm, and also Peter Creedy as well has announced his departure from Waterford. We'll get the lads' reaction to that. I suppose, Liam, we'll come to you first. How are things going with yourself, and any general reactions to the senior hurling championship this year from a Dublin perspective?
A very mixed bag. Obviously, as you can see, we were fairly reeling after the Leinster final. But it's important, even though it was disastrous in lots of ways and very disappointing in the Leinster final, there was a lot of positives before that in the Leinster round robin group. A lot of people tipped Dublin to win that game. Really, upon reflection, looking at the game against Galway, there's a lot of hard lessons to be learned by the group going forward, and they have to revert back to some of what they were doing in the round robin. I was just thinking to myself, the last game in the round robin, that significant win against Kilkenny, probably took an awful lot more out of them emotionally and every other way because it hadn't been done in so long. But to me, in that game, Dublin dictated how they wanted to play in that game. And we saw the total opposite against Galway. It was like they were almost shell-shocked, really, to be quite honest about it. Galway dictated and they went out, played their game, imposed their tactics, and it was like Dublin just reacted to them and didn't listen, we all appreciate here when a team imposes certain tactics on you or throw a curveball at you, you do have to react to a point, but you can't deviate too much from your own game plan. So it's almost like you try and tailor your game to suit without going too far. But to me, Dublin just were in total reaction mode and almost like rabbits in the headlights kind of reaction almost. It was that was the feeling. And that was the sense around the stadium as well. So, I don't think it's a true reflection of where they're at. Now there's other questions there in terms of where are they psychologically when it comes to these finals and why are these major flops happening. But there was too many positives to take out of the Leinster round robin. You couldn't ignore a lot of the positives in terms of their performance, particularly in the Kilkenny game. And less so in the Galway game, apart from the fact that it was a good win and how they kind of ground out that win in the last 20 minutes. That was impressive. But the performance against Kilkenny, to me, was something I was expecting them to bring into the Galway game, and we didn't see it at all in terms of their setup. And I heard someone referring to it on social media around Brian Hayes there. In a way, it was almost a reaction, and I was very impressed with Dublin management actually, how they had that plan in place because when I heard Rush when it was announced before the game that he wasn't going to start, I have to be honest and say, oh my God, we're in serious trouble here because of his previous performances against Galway and Wexford in those games, because he was pivotal in those matches in Dublin getting the result. The argument is there, would they have got the result if he wasn't on the pitch? And I saw him against Wexford in that last, say, 15 minutes. There's always a win down there as well in Wexford Park. And Wexford were down to 5 or 6 points. So, he, with his experience, you could see him managing the game on the field. So he was drawing all his defenders back. In other words, don't concede a goal and we're going to win here. We're out the door. But you could see him actually doing that on the pitch. So he does bring that with him. And against Galway as well, he had a huge influence on the game in the way he played that day. But look, no more than yourselves, any player that's been out of the game for 3 or 4 years, you're always going to wonder when they're on the big pitch in Thurles or in Croke Park, are they going to have that extra half yard of pace that you need? Now, again, I don't want to be too unfair to him, because the way the Dublin defence were pulled all over the pitch, even if he was a half a yard faster, he still would have been exposed because of the way that Dublin defence set up. So the jury's still out on that. I mean, I'd imagine Clare will definitely be targeting him if he starts in terms of trying to expose his that half a yard. Clare have serious forwards. So you'd imagine they might be trying to see how could they hurt him there.
Yeah, absolutely. great points there. And I suppose, Rory, get yourself in here. Even looking at it from a Dublin angle, I mean, as Liam has said, round robin was pretty positive, unbeaten. And I mean, we'd take time back 12 months ago, leading into that Limerick All Ireland quarter final. A reaction certainly happened that day in the quarter final. So Clare have to be pretty wary of a reaction from Dublin given what happened 12 months prior.
Yeah, and I think, look, there's no excuses for Clare. Like, they saw what Dublin did last year against Limerick, and on the day, I know you could look at Limerick and say what happened to them and so on, but Dublin hurled really well on the day. Like, Cian O'Sullivan was magnificent. They took scores from distance with 14 men. Thought that they played outstanding that day, and that is the danger from a Clare point of view, is that Dublin have these big performances in them. Often when the heat is off, as Liam said, like, there seems to be a poor reaction to the pressure of a big game like the Leinster final the last day. But in this case, they're coming in here now with expectations have been dampened. Pressure's on Clare, I think. And especially with it being, down in Thurles where Clare played so well in the past, just past few years. In fact, I think since Lohan came in, the only team to have beaten Clare in Thurles is Limerick, and that's over a period of about 10 or 11 games. So they've beaten all comers apart from Limerick in Thurles. So that's something, that Clare and Lohan will probably try and use something for motivation, that it has been a good venue for them. But when we know Dublin outside, I know this year the win in Salthill I think was important, but sometimes when they have come down to Munster in quarter-final games in the past, have struggled to kind of perform to the level they have in Leinster. But saying that though, I just think that Cian O'Sullivan, if he's back, and by all accounts I think he is, like, he'll add something inside, because the last day, the long ball into Heatherton, and I think Dublin got heavily criticised for not deviating from that tactic, but I think the fact Cian O'Sullivan was kind of missing as well, it kind of compounded what they were at. It meant they kind of figured that this was the way to hurt Galway, because it hurt them up in Salthill. But maybe what Dublin should have done if they were going to go that way was put Ronan Hayes in there from the start as well, and have the two big guys in there. So if Tahi Burke picks up one, then who's going to pick up the other guy? I think Cian O'Sullivan back though gives them that mix. They can go high low, a bit like Limerick when Gillane is there. They can mix up the ball inside. So look, that is a worry for Clare. If Heatherton starts, I think Lohan probably has to go with Conor Cleary, who hasn't been on form this year, but I thought he did okay in him in the league final when he matched him, and he's the only guy really who's the physicality, I'd say, for Heatherton. But it'll be interesting to see, like, as Liam said, will there be a big reaction from O'Callaghan? Will he tear up the script a small bit in terms of personnel after the kind of the misfiring in the Leinster final? Will he show a bit of faith to how well they played in the round robin? So there's a load of questions about this game, and no more so. It's not just at the Dublin side, there's plenty of questions for Clare, because as Liam said, trying to expose Liam Rush, are you going to go with a Diarmuid Stritch again at centre forward? Didn't play well against Cork and Rob Downey, but this could be a different scenario in Thurles. You'll get that bit of space like he did against Tipperary. And we saw the damage he could do with a bit of space against Tipperary. So I think if he's at centre forward, Dublin have to have a bit of a plan there, because they'll want Liam Rush to sit back, cover the half back line and be a bit of protection to the full back line. So who will pick up Stritch then if that's the case? So there's all these little subplots, and at the other end, Dublin are going to be looking at if John Callan starts centre back, how can they exploit him for pace a bit as well? So yeah, it's intriguing. And just one small thing as well, I'm just wondering, I think it'll help Clare if Dublin pull an extra defender, maybe as a reaction to the Galway game. I think it'll help Clare because it'll free up a defender at the Clare end, and I think Clare seem a lot more solid when they have that extra cover. Against Tipperary, that's how it kind of worked that day. John Conlon ended up free. Jake Morris was picked up elsewhere, and John Conlon was free to sweep, and he played really well that day. But when he had to mark against Cork, against Shane Barrett, he was badly, exposed for pace. And what can you expect at his age? That's not the role he should be given. So if Lohan,
Rory, I actually totally concur with what you're saying there. I think if Conlon plays and his performance against Tip was outstanding, but he has to play as a +1. Like all he's done for Clare over the years, but no more than similar to a Liam Rush kind of a thing. And he can read that game in there, but he also brings that added protection that Clare need in their defence, because the one area I would worry about for Clare is how porous they can be in defence. They seem to find themselves in one-on-one situations with a lot of kind of green grass around them, but the way they play, and that has caused them bother it's caused them bother against Limerick, even against Waterford it caused them bother. I mean, they conceded 4 goals there, and it did against Cork, obviously. But when they had Conlon in the role Rory explained there, that's I think Clare have to go with that, and if they do, I think they'll be a lot harder to break down in their defence, because to me, in terms of ability, they have the best 6 forwards in the country, and that's even comparing them to Cork and Limerick. In my opinion, in terms of ability, I'm not saying that that will mean the performance will come or it'll be a coherent performance. Definitely, the ability is there. We've seen enough from them, and they have a lovely mix. Like they actually have target men in Duggan and Fitzgerald if he plays. And then you mix that with the smaller, agile Dermot Strich's beautiful feet. Like he is so light in his feet, so fast. And then we're not even talking about Tony Kelly. I didn't even mention Shane O'Donnell yet. And then, of course, I presume Mark Rogers is fit. Like these are outstanding talents. So like up that end of the field, Clare are very, very strong. And that's why, more than Clare, Dublin have to revert back to type, and they have to tighten up and condense their defence or they'll be eaten alive. Now, I expect that they will do that. And I would imagine that's why, again, against Kilkenny, like it worked very well in their favour. Sorry, I didn't finish this point, actually. It was that, the way they had to come up with a plan B fairly quickly, and I'm sure it was well rehearsed, but they brought Brian Hayes back into that role, and he was actually, I think that's a really smart plan for Dublin to execute with a guy with his legs and pace. Because even when he's playing in that covering role, he has the pace and the engine to get up and down the pitch. So he can still be an attacking threat as a player off the shoulder. He can still give you that as well as what he's doing defensively. So I think Dublin, there's a lot of consideration going to have to go into how they set up. If he's going to be back there covering, where does Rush go? Does Rush start? It's hard for me to see that Rush won't start if he's fit. But there's arguments for me in terms of recent performances. There's merit in putting Brian Hayes in there.
Rory, bringing it back to yourself, I mean, is there any credence on the two league fixtures that both these counties played recently enough as well? I mean, the 1B final was very much a game of two halves down in Limerick, for sure. But do you think both managers could learn anything from those league fixtures to adjust the game plan accordingly?
Well, like I thought Clare's best patch was the 10 minutes where they were down to 14 men with the black card. And that in that case, they had 5 forwards. So that's why I think it wouldn't hurt Clare to go with 5 forwards and have that extra cover, because that is our problem, as Liam pointed out, the amount of goal chances we're giving away. And it's also the style of defending, like Rory Hayes, Adam Hogan. Like they seem to think they can win every single ball that goes in there. And sometimes, like, it's impossible. You have to set up to defend. The forward is going to win the ball, and you have to make sure you limit the damage and make him pass it off, or don't let him get inside. As we see, like I think I mentioned this last week before, but Sean Finn does it expertly well. Doesn't win every ball, but apart from the odd time, I know he got turned by Buckley there for a goal chance. But in general, like, he keeps the forward outside and just defends without the ball, let's say. Whereas the Clare backs don't seem to have that. It's all or nothing. And if you don't have an extra man there, then the all or nothing, like you win 3 balls, but the one you don't win is a goal. And that seems to be the way, like, our cornerbacks are hurling at the minute. So look, the extra player will provide cover for that. But look, as well, I think for Clare, personnel is important. We mentioned it there with Dublin, with Cian Sullivan being fit. I think Conor Burke, I just heard on the radio earlier today, looks like he's going to be fit because he hobbled off the last time around. And it looks like Dublin are going to have a full deck. And I think Clare, very hard to get any news from the Clare camp, but Ryan Taylor and Mark Rogers should both return. Ryan Taylor be a huge boost. Just the energy he brings, because Clare are an aging team, like that's, and I know there's the likes of Stritch coming in there and 1 or 2 guys, but in general, the average age of the team is really, it's quite high. But Taylor gives that energy and legs to the middle third. Without him against Cork, Clare just looked one pace there and beaten for all the breaks. So it's going to be a factor who's available as well, because I just think without Ryan Taylor there, Clare are going to have to, maybe bring in a Jack O'Neill or one of the other younger lads in there.
The pace will be, that's one thing Dublin have. They do. Now, I know they looked so flat against Galway, but I'm parking that kind of in terms of what I saw in consistently over the previous months. One thing, now, even when they weren't as good in recent years, they've always had the pace and the agility and the athleticism. That's always been there. It's kind of been lacking in terms of the skill execution, the hurling side of things, which has improved. But that could be an area that would threaten Clare around the middle. So they're going to need to match them for legs around there, Rory. Yeah, I'd agree with that. So sorry, Rory, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, you're grand.
Right there.
Yeah, and I just think in general, Liam, that Clare, I think, with Dublin having doubts after the way the backline defended last night, Clare should go for goal the first few minutes and just see, can they put further doubt in, Like against Cork, we created 3 goal chances in the first 7 minutes, took none of them. If we can start being a bit more clinical in front of goal and, Dublin might be thinking, here we go again, kind of a thing with concession of goals, like against Cork last year, Ireland semi-final, and against Galway last as well. So look, there must be doubts there, no more so than Clare's backline, but I just think if Clare can start in the front foot and get build up an early lead quickly, I'd be fairly confident we'd see it from there. But I'd just be to be honest, you would be very nervous about this game based on as Liam said, scratch out the Leinster final, and based on what Dublin have done, I tipped Dublin for the Leinster final as well. I just going by form, the fact they had won.
Yeah, I know it's going on form. Yeah,
I presume it's a case as well then of Dublin maybe not panicking a bit after the game and sticking, as you said, with what worked for them. But both teams very similar. Clare have been completely up and down. The Tipperary performance, I just thought in terms of intensity was massive, and we didn't repeat that in any of the other games. So they're going to have to repeat that on Saturday evening, or they're going to be in trouble.
It's funny. I think Clare are kind of they're a passionate county, a passionate people, and I think if they don't bring that, you'll never get the same level of performance. But when they bring it, they're like a different team, and that's what I actually think championship knockout games suit Clare for that reason. And they're back. Obviously, look, the game is knockout on Saturday evening, and I'm expecting that they're going to bring that. And if they do bring it, it's hard for me to see Dublin getting one over on them. To me, I would fancy Clare, and it's based on their forwards really, because even if you cancel out one or two of their forwards there, you have another one or two, and they're just exceptional. I can't see how Dublin's defence are going to be able to hold. Say even if there is 5 up front for Clare, then there'll be one or two of them I just feel will do serious damage out of the 5. I don't see the same kind of threat on the other end of the pitch. At the moment, look, Donald Burke was kept quiet against Galway. Hedgehow was managed well by Burke. Cian O'Sullivan, as you said earlier, Rory, is crucial. If he's not playing, we're in serious trouble. We're over-reliant on those 3. And I know there's young lads there who didn't show what they can do. Like young David Purcell there has serious potential.
Yeah.
You could see he's a bit green, got a bit overexcited and pulled the trigger as you would when you're young. And that will come for him. He has amazing feet. He's very hard to mark. He's a serious hurler. So he's coming, but he's young, he's young yet. I know your man, Sean Curry, came onto the pitch. He was injured for a long, long time. He was effective when he came on, but it might be a bit I don't know, is there 70 minutes of an excellent performance in him? He's played so little hurling, but again, it's a bonus to have him back, and hopefully he can contribute. But I'd be leaning towards Clare myself. I just, with Dublin, I feel they're still trying to find what suits them best. It's just, say against Clare, that 1B final you referred to earlier on, Dublin in that first half, if you remember, and they were going lateral across the pitch. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
And you were there in your mind going, well, you let the ball in. They weren't, just be a bit more direct. And you could see, obviously, that then they were more direct during the Leinster round robin. And obviously, what got them over the line against Galway was introducing the 2 lads as impact subs. And they were more direct, and they got the joy that day. They got the result. But then it was they just 100% threw all their eggs in one basket and went with that tactic in the Leinster final against the same opposition. And I just wonder, did they think they had Galway figured out and that was going to work? It was going to play the same way, because Galway obviously had their homework done and they were well prepared for Dublin, And just the last thing I'll say on that is, if you were going to be hitting high ball on top of your target man, John Heatherton, I couldn't believe this actually looking at the match. There was no Dublin forward there to run off breaking ball for John Heatherton. He was on his own, and there was when the ball broke, there was 2 or 3 Galway defenders there. There was an extra Galway defender and Cathal Mannion coming in, and I just didn't understand it, because against Kilkenny, I'll bring you back to the Kilkenny game, and in that first 20-25 minutes of that Kilkenny match in Parnell Park, not only did Heatherton score 2 or 3 points, if you remember, nearly every score came from him. Ball broke from him and scores came off him. An awful lot of the scores Dublin got in that first 20 minutes came through or from John Heatherton. So my point is, they were there. There were numbers. There were bodies around Heatherton there for breaking ball in that game, but that wasn't to be seen in the Galway game. So why did they change? I just, you know what I mean? So sorry about that. I just turned off that phone. So so I feel there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and hopefully the management will, pick up on what we're picking up on and see that. I'm sure they will, and act on it, because if you're going to go route 1, you have to have players beside them feeding off break, because you can pick up break off at the likes of a Heatherton. Clare have a Duggan as well inside. He can do the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's bucket in the mix, like, and there's a few questions for Lohan as well, because Shane Meehan, who played nearly every minute of the league and played really well against Dublin in the first half of the league final, had a poor second half, and it seems because of that, he didn't start against Waterford, hasn't started any of the round robin games as a result, and it's kind of it's a bit baffling because he was going so well in the league, and he looks like a player that'd be suited, to championship and the fast ball and fast ground. And when he came on against, I know it was only like a last couple of minute cameo against Waterford, he got a goal. He got a goal against Cork. I know it was, as the Americans call it, garbage time at the end of the game, but still, like, he looks lively, and I thought he looked lively when he came on against Cork, as opposed to what we'd seen from some of the other guys, So I'm just wondering, will, like, Lohan give him his start again, just freshen things up in the forward line a small bit? And I think that's one thing as well, like, Clare have that couple of options in the forwards off the bench as well. In Galvin, who's been a bit of a super sub, got his start against Cork, and, everyone is kind of saying, why doesn't Ian Galvin ever get a start? But, didn't go well from him, and he's just so effective off the bench. I think he's just got that role for himself now as, a guy who'll come in with 15 minutes to go and get you a couple of scores. So, look, it'll just be interesting. I think Clare have had 4 weeks now that's another factor as well. Since the Munster Championship, 4 weeks to get themselves sorted and sort out the backline a bit. I'd be very disappointed if Lohan doesn't kind of have first of all, his best shape sorted for the team, and second of all, best personnel out there, because, as he pointed out, this is knockout hurling now, and, you can't afford any mistakes from here on in.
No, guys, this is a very intriguing fixture.
Just slightly towards Clare. Now, I expect Dublin to come with a performance. I really do. And as we've already said, they're at their most dangerous when they're being written off or when people question them. And I think that's a kind of an issue for them as well. That's almost like they struggle to handle or deal with the weight of expectation. It's unfamiliar ground for them. And I think that's part of a bigger problem for them, like that we saw against Galway. But I think they're back in here now. And this is, in a way, it's familiar territory to them in recent years, in that they're going in. Okay, they were Leinster runners up this year and against Kilkenny a couple of years ago, but they're going in an All-Ireland quarter final. They've done this before in the last few years, but as Ruairi pointed out, I have to say, and like, their record is not good down in Thurles, and Clare like playing in Thurles. They have a good record down there. Like, this all adds to me just leaning towards Clare, even like as in Clare getting a result. I just really do hope Dublin come to performance, and you just never know. Like, these two teams have been very unpredictable and inconsistent in recent matches. Like, Clare got hammered. Like, I mean, well, in terms of score difference, like, they were beaten by, what was it, 15 points by Limerick, and then 16 points by Cork. Like, Dublin were hammered by Galway. You just don't know, but again, I do feel Clare will come. I think knockout hurling suits Clare. They're a passionate crowd. They play with passion. If they bring that, I just think they're going to have too much for Dublin, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I'm just hoping, Liam, as well, from even a neutral perspective, that Dublin bring a performance, because I think they deserve it, given the round robin progression, particularly last year, getting to an All-Ireland semi-final. But I suppose, Ruairi, getting in there, are you feeling kind of semi-confident here Clare will do the job and advance?
You actually could not be confident with Clare going into any game at the minute, Mark. Just the way they're gung-ho and leaking goals at the other end. So there's a lot of ifs involved. I think if Clare bring the intensity they brought against Tipperary in Thurles, and I know you might say, well, Tipperary were nothing this year, but still, like, it was knockout hurling for them as well, that game. Just how Clare kind of bossed it physically, and kept the scoreboard ticking over throughout. As we mentioned, Stritch had a great duty shooting boots on there, and Sean Rinn as well. Look, I just think that if Clare can repeat that performance, I'd give them a great chance, and they should get through. But if they come out with anything like performances against Cork and Limerick and Dublin are up for it, they could be in trouble. So there's a lot of ifs involved here, like, and there's a lot of unknowns as well. Like, if Ryan Taylor isn't playing, like, I think that swings a massive advantage to Dublin as well. But look, all going well and everything, I just think, like, Clare, and the Thurles factor is huge. I know we both touched on it earlier, but, like, Clare, as I mentioned, I think since Brian Lohan took over, they've beaten Tip there 4 times, beaten Cork there, Waterford there, Wexford there a couple of times. The only team, as I said, that's beaten them there is Limerick, so that has to stand for something. This team love it, and even the under-20s, anytime they get down to Thurles, underage teams play really well there as well. It just seems to be, we have a better record there than we have in Cusack Park at the minute, and Cusack Park is meant to be this fortress, but we actually don't get that many great results there. So look, I think that is a factor. It definitely is. yeah, just without any real conviction, I'm going to go Clare maybe by, let's say, a goal.
Sure, lads, we might switch tack here to Sunday and the meeting of Cork and Offaly in the second quarter-final of the senior hurling. I suppose, Liam, to get you in here, I suppose, what are your thoughts leading into this game? I mean, Offaly have been one of the stories of the championship, qualifying out Leinster this year at the expense of Kilkenny. I suppose, do you give Offaly a good chance against Cork, who are probably regrouping after this Munster Senior Hurling Championship final loss against Limerick?
Yeah, like in terms of a result, I only see, I know we normally say this at the end, but I really do only see one winner, and it's not Offaly. But I just think there's a lot more to this. There's a lot more at stake in this for Offaly, and it's not, obviously they're going in and they want to get the result, and that's the way they'll be prepared. That's the way they'll be going in. But you know what I mean? A performance will be huge here against Cork for them, that they can stay with Cork and deliver a good performance, and it's going to be a significant challenge. But I do think like what Offaly have done this year is just amazing, and I like their style of hurling. I think the management have kept their style simple and straightforward. They don't complicate things. They tend to kind of make the right decisions on the ball a lot. And even from the first game against Dublin, when I saw them, I'm sure they targeted that game in their own home patch, especially after the game in Parnell Park last year, where they were very, very close to winning that game. You know, I'm sure that was, they wanted to get them on their own home patch and try and get one over in Dublin, and Dublin were blessed to get a draw that day. But like watching them that day, and from that day on, and the other matches I saw, they're very united as a group, no matter who's on the pitch, and they're very intense in the tackle. So they're kind of playing with a real savage intensity in their defense when they're tackling, and then they break out at pace. This is the kind of style they're playing. And like a lot of teams, like their wing forwards, their half forwards come back very, very deep. So they crowd it out, and then when they break at pace. And what they did, Dublin had to address this. Like they tend to, if they see, they'll run straight at you. Like you can see that they've been coached to go straight for the jugular, go for the goal. If there's space in front of you, go for it. But again, this is kind of simple. There's nothing too complex in terms of the tactics there, but it's simple, but it's effective, and it's the right decision to make. So I think their decision making on the ball has been good. Their intensity has been good. They tend to like they have the target man on the edge of the square in Duignan as well, and they have little hurler like nippy hurlers like Sweeney around him. And to be fair to Owen Cal, he's done so well since he came in place of Charlie Mitchell, and he's done very, very well in his place. They're working well, they're working cohesively, but it's just, to me, it's another level now they're going to be playing, when they come up against Cork next week. And it's going to, like, if I was Offaly, you'd imagine, look, mind the house, don't concede goals, try and set yourself up defensively to stay in the game. That's the way I'd be kind of thinking Offaly will have to set up, because Cork have legs. They have frightening pace. They have very high skill level. You know what I mean? And all they want to do is, Cork are all about creating space. And if you afford Cork space, they will punish you. And that's a fair play to Limerick. Limerick didn't give them that. And they try to crowd out the defence. They close them out. Don't give them space, because they're one of those teams that they will do more damage than most if you afford them space. So I think Offaly have to kind of set up in that way, and then try and it's not deviating too much from the game plan that I've watched them play in terms of their half forwards coming deep and breaking at pace. That's actually what they're doing anyway. So that could feed into them just sticking to their game plan and being as effective as they can against Cork.
Yeah, absolutely, because Liam was at the match in Salt Hill between Galway and Offaly. And to be fair to Offaly, they hung in there for 45, 50 minutes, but very much the same. Their half forward line really kind of retreating deep and breaking fairly quickly. I suppose, Ruairi, looking at Cork perspective, a narrow loss against Limerick very late in the day. Do you see Ben O'Connor and management changing it up a little bit in terms of giving one or two guys from the squad a bit of game time here, or do you think he's just going to go straight for the kill here early against Offaly?
I think the second one, you don't take any chances at this stage, and Offaly have shown enough, particularly in performances Lee mentioned, and of course the Kilkenny game. They held the Kilkenny forward line to 121 there with Owen Cody, Keown, Cian Kenny. They had Tom Phelan as well. They had 4 or 5. That was the one game where Kilkenny were able to put out more or less 5 of their 6 forwards, despite their injuries, and to hold them to 121 is serious going. So I think Cork can't take chances there. The only change, like Fitzgibbon, obviously, I think he should be back now. I think he's 6 weeks since he's had his operation. So, and it'd be, from a Ben O'Connor's point of view, a good one to get him a game in, a championship match in Thurles, against an Offaly team who, let's be honest, like this was their target, was to get to a quarter final, and they're a team that are gradually building every year. As Liam said, once you go out there and give a performance and don't get absolutely blown out of it, which there's a potential could happen here, because Cork in these type of games have like dealt out beatings to teams in the past, no more so than, let's say, against Dublin. They're in semi-final last year. They are very goal hungry and they can rack up a big score very quickly. So I think something Offaly need to be wary of. And look, Killian Sampson, centre back, has been very good for Offaly. He's been solid. Ben Keneally, fullback. Like, these are some of the kind of the older guard as well that were that are held the ground with the 20s coming in. And then you have some of the younger guys like Taff, cornerback, who was on the under 20s team. And as Liam said, like Dan Burke coming back deep is very effective. He's so comfortable on the ball. He's got pace, creates holes in defences running at them. So look, Offaly do have enough threats for Cork to be wary. And they have to show Offaly respect here as well, because there is a forward line that can put up a score as well at the other end. Like, even with Charlie Mitchell missing, as we said, Owen Cahill came in, stepped up, but like Screeney, dangerous, and in Thurles, these guys are going to get a bit of space, Yeah. And so I think Cork are going to be definitely wary. I don't see them taking any chances in terms of selection or personnel. I do expect Fitzgibbon to go back into the team, all right, but that would probably be about it, Mark. And unless there's like guys who have put up their hand in training and grabbed a jersey, let's say. But other than that, I think Cork are going to go full strength. And yeah, it's look, is there a potential shock there? Of course there is. If as Liam said, if Offaly can hang in there, and even something like a red card or a black card penalty or something like that, they can swing a game if they can in there long enough. But it is really hard to see. Just Cork are a good bit more down the road than Offaly are. These are seasoned team who are expecting like minimum expectations to win All Ireland this year. Whereas I think Offaly's expectation was to, get to an Ireland quarter final and then have a cut at whoever they're up against. So yeah, and that's taking nothing away. I think Offaly have been fantastic in Leinster. Not only could they have, beaten Dublin, could have beaten Kilkenny as well and ended up in the Leinster final very easily. They're there in merit, and they're a team building. And just, I think, another step in that, journey they're on is to go against Cork, go toe-to-toe with them and see, how many problems they can cause for Cork, how long they can kind of hang in there, and especially defensively. Can they set up in a way that Cork aren't going to blitz them for 4 or 5 goals, which, Cork would be setting out to do.
Absolutely.
So, look, a lot to go for Offaly.
Liam, get you in there as well. What's your thoughts been on Cork this season?
Yeah, like the jury's out for me on Cork still. In terms of, I just questioned, until I see it, like I just questioned their psychological kind of strength, as in mental. You know what I mean? Like, obviously they were beaten by Clare 2 years ago in an All Ireland final, and last year we all saw what happened in that second half against Tipperary, the league final. And then again, like, to me, when they play against certain teams, now I know, look, Limerick are on another level in terms of physicality and aggression. Like, we have to kind of acknowledge that. But it's like, I just feel like Limerick actually bully a lot of the Cork players in terms of how they play. And sometimes that's how you have to quiet. And I don't mean, and I'm not talking about being reckless, but like, take case in point, we'll take Barrett. You'd often see Barrett winning a ball, and there's a Limerick fella knocking him back on his backside, like very quickly, knocking him back, not letting him in, not giving him a chance to run at you. And you have to do that against them lads if you want to stay in the game. But Limerick do it. They impose themselves physically on some Cork players. And I just question, like, are they just a little bit too nice when it comes down to it to actually cross the line and win an All Ireland? Now, I do believe that they have the potential to do it, but they have to bring something and show something that they haven't shown yet, and that's what it's going to take for them to win an All Ireland. Like, they have to get more aggressive. They have to get, I don't like using the word nasty, but you know what I'm saying, in the faces of the opposition. They have to. There's not enough of that in their game from enough of their individual players that play in their teams, in my opinion. Like, they'll always have the skill level. If you give them space, people know that. So you're going to come with a game plan that's going to try and minimize affording them all that space. They're still so close to it, though. I mean, they are in the top 2 teams, I suppose, on paper in the last couple of years. There's no denying it. But there's a thin line, but there's a huge step to try and cross that line and get over and actually win an All Ireland. Like, so the jury's out. We'll see how they go. It just surprised me against Limerick though that they didn't introduce more subs actually when there was a lot of players who underperformed. Like, why did they bring Harnedy on so late? I just wonder. Now, I'm not privy to what's going on in their training sessions, but there's supposed to be all this strength and depth in their panel. And I do respect that they have injuries. They got a few setbacks, and that's unlucky for them. But like, I just, when a lot of their players are underperforming, I was a bit surprised that more players from the panel were not introduced and brought onto the pitch in that game. So I don't know. I have a few question marks about them.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely, in my opinion, have too much for Offaly the weekend. And after that, Jesus, you wouldn't know. That Galway game, if they get that far, will be very interesting.
Yeah,
and Liam, just to jump in your point about the substitutes, like Limerick had taken Gillan off at that stage, like who was underperforming, but so many of the Cork forwards were underperforming and were left out there in the hope they might do something. I don't think you can afford to do that anymore. As you were saying with these, if a guy isn't performing, and Cork are meant to have, as you said, this strength and depth in the forward line, that it was just amazing that they didn't, bring in guys a lot earlier.
Yeah, I thought that myself, I really did. It's amazing too, though, even though when I looked at the scoreboard, to me, when the game was playing out in the Munster final, it felt like Limerick were 6, 7, 8 points a better team than Cork on the day in terms of their performance. When I was watching the game, and yet on the scoreboard they only won by a point.
And Nicky Quaid made 2 or 3 fantastic saves as well.
Yeah.
It was just a real strange game. It kind of went against all stats and all, it was just a weird game how it played out. But it's hard to see past them against Offaly. And I do think if they go over the line, I think Galway will give them plenty of it. And that's going to be, I think it's going to be a hard one to call, and I hope Cork aren't already looking at a final against Limerick, as all the media are kind of already playing it out that this 5th time they're going to meet or whatever it is. They don't want to be listening to that kind of stuff because they take their eye off it, and they'll be dealt another fatal blow here if they aren't fully tuned in and fully focused on each game.
Absolutely not. There's plenty of hurling to be played as well, guys, before we even get to that stage as well. We see all last year as well with the upsets in the quarterfinals, so plenty to be playing for. I suppose, guys, we'll move on. We'll talk about intercounty managerial announcements that have been made in the last few weeks, particularly down the southeast of the country. Keith Rossiter stepping aside as Wexford manager, and Peter Creeley as well from Waterford after 2 years. I suppose, Liam, get your thoughts on those 2 announcements, really.
Yeah, I suppose the writing was on the wall with the Keith Rossiter one. I know he actually made a comment in his media kind of interview after one of the games. It wasn't the last game. So the kind of jury, we were half expecting that to come. Look, it's been difficult for Keith Rossiter, I have to say. He just didn't seek his 4th year reappointment. It's not that it hadn't got to the stage where he was sitting down with County Board. Look, I'm aware he has a young family. It's a huge commitment. It's like another full-time job and more. I'd say, and again, I'm just looking from the outside in, but some of the big players that Wexford had that probably still had a bit more left in them, a few of them opted to retire, which is absolutely, it's a full-time job, and that was what they did. And then 1 or 2 opted out of playing this year, and he can't afford to do without those players. I'd say that was tough. He's never going to say that, but he needed everybody really. And without those, it was probably a bit disheartening for him going into his 3rd season, and we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but to me, looking at him, he just looked like a frustrated figure on the sideline this year when I was looking at him. Now, on the camera, I mean, not speaking to anybody, but that's what he looked like to me when I saw him. That's what he looked frustrated, I think that Dublin game was a key game this year for them. And I know Dublin kind of put up a high score in that first half on a windy day down there, but there were a few kind of moments in that game where it could have been different. I don't know if you remember, but I remember a short puck out Fanning took, and it was intercepted, and it was put in the back of the net by the Dublin forward. Simple giveaway goal. There was another play within that first half. This was Wexford against the wind, and there was an overlap on. The forward running through just gave a bad hand pass. It didn't go to hand, but it was an overlap and a potential goal. Little things like that didn't go their way. And to me, when they lost that game, it was they were kind of on a downward curve after that, really. To me, and against Galway, it was typical Wexford, they were just playing for pride, the pride of the jersey, putting in a performance, but really, you know what I mean, they weren't going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Rory, get you in there as well. I mean, Keith's been on the show before, but I mean, this year has been a struggle for him, and I suppose there's no real surprise that he's kind of stepped aside here.
Yeah, and I just wonder, like, was there an element, and this is from outside looking in as well, as Liam would say, but was there an element that not all of Wexford is pulling together? Because I don't know, is there, like, I don't know, with St. Martin's, a few of the St. Martin's boys didn't play this year, and I know Jack O'Connor was made captain. I wonder, was that a kind of an olive branch or something? Because it just seems to be a small bit of disharmony with, certain lads kind of opting out and so on. And Rory Jacob was on with us a few weeks ago, and he said, like, there's 5-6 guys that should be there that have opted not to play, like, and he was saying from the whole county in general. So it is really hard when you're, with a county that does need everyone, no more so than Clare do or Dublin do. You need everyone available to get on the pitch. And you just felt like, he wasn't dealt his full hand. And particularly this year, the last couple of years round robin, like it used to be Wexford Dublin, was the big game to try and make sure. And then you Dublin toppling Galway a few times. And yeah, so it's just like they've definitely kind of, I think they've fallen away from the potential to win a Leinster. They're further away now than they have been, in a small while. But the players are probably in the county, as we saw with St. Martin's club team this year. Like, there is strong club hurling there. They just, need to get them united and get their best team out in the pitch and best squad in training next year. But so yeah, look, I do feel for Keith Rossiter in that way, like that, and he does come across as a real passionate guy in interviews and so on. And as Liam said, just frustrated that he just couldn't put the best Wexford side out there that he would have liked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you guys totally, because, I mean, the unforced errors as well were absolute killers throughout the championship season, particularly the Dublin match down in Chadwick's Park, Liam particularly. But, I mean, from Keith Rossiter's perspective, he'll take time out, obviously, with his family. And I'd say in another year or two, he'll be chomping at the bit to get into another intercounty job. So we wish him well. I suppose Liam Peter Queally as well served 2 years as Waterford manager. And I felt personally progression was made for Waterford. I know they may not have advanced from round robin, but they looked a hell of a lot better this year. And were probably unfortunate with some decisions and maybe a few game time decisions to get through. I suppose, get your thoughts here on this Peter Queally departure as well.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I was surprised when I heard it announced in the media because, he's 2 years. This was his second year, was it?
This was his second year.
Yeah, and like, to me, it was clear that there was progress being made by the team. I mean, you could see that in the performances. Like, against Clare, like, I mean, they delivered a good performance. They stayed with Clare, and there wasn't too much in that game. Against Cork, the same, and they were unlucky that Stephen Bennett had to go off in that match. Like, a few things didn't go their way in that game, and they still, I know they didn't get a goal and they lost by 4 points in the end, but like, they were with Cork. Like, that game on another day could have gone another way with a bit of luck. Against Limerick, I was very impressed with them that day. Like, they played like with their hearts on their sleeves. Like, that day, they just gave it everything. You could see they were it was a hunt. Like, it was one of those games, like, where they played with full intensity. From the outside looking in, it's when you see a team playing like that, you see a united group. You see a group who are playing for their manager because there's harmony within the group. That's what that's what I see when I see a group playing like that, like their lives depended on it. And that's what it looked like against Limerick. And they were with Limerick right up to the 60+ minute.
Absolutely.
Really were. And worth every penny of it. But we don't know again what's going on inside or in the background. We don't know. I was just surprised that it was made known by Queally he intended on, I think, taking it on another year. And there definitely was something for Waterford to build on. That's what you'd be thinking. A neutral would be looking in going, there's definitely something coming here now. Waterford are improving. They're playing together as a team. They were unlucky not to get a win or two this turn in the Munster Championship here. They came close. Like, something to build on going forward for sure. And again, because they looked united, I thought he would be in a shoe-in for another year there. It'd just be a review and continue on doing what you're doing. But this is us looking in from the outside. I really don't know what or why. I feel they're making a mistake down there, like by kind of parting with him.
Yeah, no, Rory, like, I mean, he's a proud Waterford man, and we see the emergence of the underage in Waterford, particularly the recent All Ireland final win underage. Sean Mackey, Sean Walsh, there is a good conveyor belt of talent coming through here. So this seems just a little bit odd. Year 2 in a managerial era with Peter Queally gone and new manager coming in may have new ideas and might completely reset the whole thing. Get your thoughts?
Yeah, look, because I kind of thought Waterford maybe needed, a bit of stability. Because look, 2 years ago we had they were knocked out of the championship in Cusack Park with the whole 65 incident thing with Davy Fitz, and then like Queally came in and probably there was a bit of rebuilding to be done, and he had Caleb Lyons in Australia last year as well, and didn't we're talking about managers having their full deck and whatever, but you just felt this year as Waterford were going along, and he was getting players back in, especially after the game in Ennis. I just thought they began to look, especially defensively, a lot more solid. Yeah, and Sean Mackey, as we saw when he came on at half time against Tipperary, the performance he gave midfield, and one of these young lads coming through, and as we mentioned, All Ireland minor champions last year, and you just felt like, as Liam said, at least one more year, and because I know results aren't everything, and whatever his detractors could say, oh, he'd one win in 8 in the Munster round robin, but there's more to it than just the results, and you could see, especially could easily have beaten Tipperary. The Cork game, as Liam said, bad injury there this year, and against Limerick, he had the Aidan O'Connor dropping the hurley maybe for the hand pass goal, and it's just every small thing seemed to go against him, And I know you make your own luck and this and that, but at the same time, when things are so tight, bad luck. What to say? If you didn't have bad luck, you'd have no luck at all. But I'd have given him another year, as Liam said, at least, and just see, because definitely, and I saw them play twice. I was at their game against Limerick. I was at the Clare match in Ennis. Even from the Clare game to the Limerick game, I thought the performance had improved and the team are improving, and that's a sign of things right in the camp. The team is getting stronger as the games are going on. And look, they were going to be in a position next year where they were going to be down and 1B, a bit like Clare this year. It would have been perfect for them to bring in some of those minor guys from last year and blood them through, and then have a right cut at the Munster Championship. So look, you just wonder, maybe is the current management team kind of going to step up maybe with one or two new faces coming in, or is it going to be, if it's a complete new management team? I agree with Liam. I think that would be a big mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. No, wish both guys well. I suppose, Liam, before we leave here, because I know you've had a great record in terms of being with Dublin Hurlers, also Dublin footballers, but also being part of the Ger Cunningham management team as well. Can you give us just a quick insight in terms of the intercounty commitment, really? Because, it seems to be absolutely savage. Yeah, could you just outline it quickly for us, just to give us an appreciation of the efforts that go in here?
And again, that was 9 years ago now, 8 or 9 years ago. So things have probably changed and progressed since then as well, as they always do. But even back then, even the level of commitment it's unbelievable, really. I think young players, they basically, they put everything else in their lives on hold for this project that they're involved in, and that's the reality of what's happening. And you'd often, a lot of these intercounty panels have 40 plus players on them, and a lot of them guys don't get game time, and they're putting the same commitment in. I often used to look at guys, and I'd feel for them that way, because that's part of the reality. But it's what you sign up for. I just think it's turning into, and you often hear this being said, but it is turning into more of a young man's game, or a single man's game, we'll say, because the demands on you now require that you just kind of have to prioritize that above everything else in your life, really. And all teams are trying to get those inches on one another. It's all fine margins, so everyone is trying to get that little advantage on the other group, or whoever they might be. So that's always there. So yeah, it's a serious commitment. But the players now as well, a modern day player now, it's kind of their lifestyle. Say the days they're not within the group, they're in gyms, they're doing their workouts, they're doing their work-ons, their individual work-ons. It becomes part of their lifestyle. So if you were to give them, say, a few days off, they'd be in the gym anyway, because that's their program. They're programmed almost to do this in their time off, and they nearly wouldn't want to deviate from it, because it psychologically would nearly affect them. So I was looking at all this when I was in there, but now when I was there as well, look, when you're winning, it makes it all a bit easier for everybody, and it didn't go well for us when we were there. So it's more challenging, I suppose, but it's very educational when you're involved in an environment and things don't go well, because you're looking at everything. It's like it's like any championship match, when you lose, you're reflecting on everything. You really kind of break things down, and you're more focused on what you're not doing well to try and improve for the next day. Sometimes when you win, maybe not at the same level. So that it was very educational experience, actually, I have to say, in terms of that.
Yeah, no, that's great insight, Liam. Thanks for that. I suppose before we finish here, guys, a quick note on the All Ireland Minor semi-finals that were played last weekend, Rory. Two cracking fixtures, but particularly the one in Gaelic grounds between Tipperary and Cork. I think this must be ranking as one of the games of the year, really. I think Cork, with 47 minutes on the clock, may have thought they might have been doing enough for an All-Ireland final win, but stepped forward a certain Chris Dunn to really destroy Cork hopes and give him man of the match display. I suppose get your thoughts on Cork and also Limerick for their emphatic win over Galway.
As you said, 47 minutes gone. Cork were 2-14 to 2-10 up and looked to be in control. And then, as you said, got hit. I think it was 3-5 to 3 points in that last 30-minute spell. And as you said, Chris Dunn came to the fore, and then another surname from Tip Hurling in the past, Tucker, scored 1-4 along with that. So, and Chris Dunn cut two sidelines over as part of that 3-5. Like, so, some like Tip have been really strong underage. Like they're winning Harty Cups, different, and it's not the one school. It's like a merry-go-round between different schools in Tipperary, winning Harty Cups at the minute. They've been really strong. All Ireland Minor, All Ireland, and under 20. Like they're the closest team even to Clare, so close, went to penalties, so that's how close they were to, because if they got over the line there, they'd have beaten Galway in the final, so they were very close to winning All Ireland under 20 in another All Ireland Minor final. Like, they're definitely doing things right underage in Tipperary, and I know it looked like doom and gloom for their seniors, but there is definitely conveyor belt coming. And then Cork as well, I had a guy, corner forward, is he Bobby Power? I think he scored 2-8. He looked really sharp, just sometimes you see these guys and you kind of follow them then over the next few years to see how they progress at under 20 and so on, because still at under 17 it is so young to champion these guys in one way. Like, it's a great experience for them, I think. I know this is a hard thing to say, and I'm saying my own club as well below, but sometimes getting to the final is valuable at that age. Like, the winning it is a bonus, but just getting to the semi-final, keeping in there as long as possible, getting the experience of a big day. And I think Tipperary getting plenty of that. Limerick as well. In fairness to Dermot Mullins, every team, underage team he goes over in Limerick, like, they always seem to do well. And Limerick have had a few lean years, and we were talking at the start of the year, the podcast, about how badly they'd been doing at minor and under 20 just the last 3 or 4 years. And this year, to turn things around, they didn't start the year too hot in the round robin either, but they just got better and better as the games went on. Gave Tip a good tight game in the Munster final, and that was on in Thurles, and then to produce massive performance against Galway. And I'm just wondering, is it showing a gulf again? Is there a gulf between Munster and Leinster? I think there definitely is underage.
Yeah, that's what struck me. Like, even because Galway were very impressive in minor and Leinster, and then they just looked like Limerick looked to be sharper. Their hurling was slicker, everything was faster. They're just like on a higher level. It was like looking at a senior team against an intermediate team. That type of that's what struck me watching that game. Like, so it is worrying, actually, in terms of the level of the level of the quality of the underage player in the Munster competitions seems to be faster, quicker, slicker. That's what we're seeing, really, I have to admit.
They're meeting for the third time, aren't they? They met in the round robin. Limerick and Tip met in the Munster final, and Tip have come out with 2 wins so far. So our Limerick is going to be third time lucky, and it wouldn't shock me, because they have been getting stronger and stronger, and that was their best performance. Against Galway, as Liam said, they were so impressive. Xavier Nelligan midfield, he impressed me even in the round robin. I think he got 1-2 from midfield, and then there's Waters wing forward.
Shane Waters,
yeah. Incidentally, the
9 points.
Yeah, the half forward line in Limerick compared to what Galway half forward line doing at the other side. Like, I think that was the difference. Both full forward lines look dangerous, but the Limerick half forward line, all of them put up a bit of a score, and no more so than Waters himself. So look, it's going to be an intriguing final, and it's not on for a couple of weeks, isn't it? They have a weekend off this weekend, and then they're in the Gaelic grounds the weekend
after.
Gaelic
grounds at 3 p.m. on Saturday, June 27th, which will be good. I suppose the only concern here for Limerick was Nelligan. I was at the match in Ennis. Limerick full value for it, but I know, Rory, you always say on this podcast, particularly when it's minors, it's all on the day, and I just felt with Galway, 1 or 2 of them just didn't deliver on the day. this has been a good Galway minor team that was well and truly touted here in Galway, where I'm based. So hopes were high going down tennis, but I mean, Limerick were just thoroughly deserving winners. They were 6 points up at the break. But Nelligan going off injured right at the end, looked suspiciously like a hamstring. He would be a big loss in the final. But again, these two teams probably know each other very well from Harty Cups and everything else. So look, it's expected to be a good crowd in TUS Gaelic grounds on Saturday, June 27th. I think they're expecting about 25,000. I know plenty of social media and Tip are rallying the troops to get as many Tipperary supporters down to the game. I'll be certainly at it as well. So, but no, it's a good tonic for Limerick underage hurling. The under-20s have struggled this season, and Dermot Mullins, to say, owes massive respect there in terms of getting there, and he has done it before, particularly with Leishan football in underage, getting All Ireland title wins. So that'll be an intriguing game. I suppose, guys, we'll leave it there. It's been a lengthy one tonight. Many thanks, Liam, for your time tonight and your insights. Best wishes anyway for the end of the school year, and also Dublin for this weekend. And also Rory, thanks for your contributions as well. Suppose next week we'll have a look at these All Ireland Senior Championship quarterfinals. Also have a quick preview of the minors, and have a look at any other intercounty hurling news stories that emerge during the week. Until then, guys, have a great weekend, and we'll chat soon.
Cheers,
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Rory. See you guys.
Lovely. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.